So before anything else, I just want to mention to everybody, we'd love for this to be collaborative. We're here for you guys. So if you have any questions, please feel free to, interrupt, ask your question. If you feel more comfortable writing it in the chat, that works as well. But we want to make sure that we're answering the questions and the things that you guys want to see. So with that being said, thank you all for joining us for the Real Insight Making Your CRE Data Actionable webinar. My name is Frank DiGiacomo. I am one of the sales leaders here at Real Insight. And today we will be discussing data centralization, including the different APIs, data feeds, and integration tools we use to bring your data into our Real Insight system. And most importantly, we'll discuss how we make your data actionable through custom reports, dashboards, and analytics. For those who are joining us and have seen Real Insight before, welcome. We are very excited to have you back. For those who are unfamiliar with our platform, just as some additional color, Real Insight is a web-based, cloud-based, life-of-loan solution spanning across origination, underwriting, asset management, and special servicing. It's used by firms like KKR, Apollo, Fortress, Capital One, Arbor Property Trust, Kane Capital, Loan Corp, Silver Peak Argentic, 3650 REIT, and of course, our parent company, CW Capital. I will now kick it off to Dan Linder, who will go through some more specifics as it relates to making your data actionable. Dan?
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it. Again, thank you everybody for the time today. If this is your first time hearing from us and seeing a Real Insight webinar, welcome. And if you've been on others, welcome back. If you've been on others, we're actually going to change it up a little bit in terms of how we kind of engage today. Essentially, if you're in the webinar, you could see on the screen we have a visual up. And I think, when we talk about technology, when we talk about data, when we talk about making information actionable, sometimes buzzwords are thrown out. And what we're going to do is kind of describe, I think, through specific scenarios. First, for example, we're going to talk about a private equity firm that is a very active bridge lender that we've been able to help make their data actionable on Real Insight. We're also going to talk about a hedge fund that buys B pieces and invests in CMBS and kind of how we make that data actionable. Before I do that, just wanted to describe kind of what you're seeing in the visual. Real Insight, as Frank said, is a web-based data centralization tool, workflow tool, reporting tool. But in order for the client to make use of this information and make it actionable, you need to get the data that is in as many places as possible into one place, have it be accurate, and have it be up to date. And I know that doesn't sound simple, and for a number of you on the call, this is very painful. And that, how can you do that? I have stuff in email. I have stuff at lawyers. I have to call lawyers. I have third parties. I have servicing data, accounting data. Essentially what we're doing, and I'm going to leverage our head of data services, Jordan Gregory, to talk through some of those scenarios, is we are taking all of your private data, we are taking all of your public data through a number of different routines and processes that we've perfected, and then we are allowing you to view your information on a map, see dashboards, output very complicated or custom models that normally take weeks but can be done in a push button way. Same with reports. Allow you to run various different alerts. Essentially, we're taking what can take weeks, months, and years to perfect and providing that solution. But it all starts with the data centralization. It all starts with our team who's able to take what works and then repeat that for our clients. So with that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce now who will be speaking with me and you guys, Jordan Gregory, who's our head of data services. Jordan's been with the company for, what is it, Jordan, 17 years? Is that 18 years? How long have you been?
That might be a little high. Maybe 15. Let's go with 15.
15 years. Jordan's been with CW Capital and run, and now RealINSIGHT running the data team for about 15 years, has worked with some really, really, really complex problems that clients have. And now we've created routines to, on the spot, create solutions and assist with those issues. So just wanted to, talk about some of those case studies. So let's start off with, started off with a private equity firm who is a very active bridge lender. They work with 3 servicers. They have an accounting system. Each one of those servicers has a different servicing technology. A lot of their information, is in Excel. They have reports, they have ASRs, they have, various different processes that are coming over from the borrowers that are non-standard. With all of that, Jordan, if you don't mind, would you just describe, as you can, some of the routines that you've been able to solve and how we were able to bring that client to success and make their data actionable?
Yep, absolutely, Dan. Appreciate that. Well, first off, I want to say that, a lot of these processes that I'll describe are generic. Our process isn't a rigid process. It's a dynamic process that we really tailor to each client. Because, as you can imagine, every client has their own data sets, their own servicers. No one client's data is going to look exactly the same as another client's. That being said, a lot of these pieces do carry over or match very closely. So we're kind of building this puzzle. We're putting it together with pieces that we're gathering from previous clients we've worked with or experiences, problems that we've solved. So, for example, in the private equity example that you mentioned, Dan,
Yeah.
We start by identifying all the data sources. So, as you mentioned, maybe they have a third-party servicer that's hosting their data. We will actually reach out with their help to that third party. We'll identify the data source or sources, whether it be a database, files that they host for them, whatever those may be. We'll open up a dialogue and we'll start working together with that third-party servicer. Maybe they also have a servicing platform in-house. We would also work with them directly to also do that same identification process where we identify what data in-house they have with the servicing platform, et cetera. And then maybe they have Excel files as well that house a bunch of data. So we identify all the data sources. We basically lay them all out. And then we work out a strategy. Somebody's
yeah, sorry, guys. Would you mind just turning your mics on mute?
So we work with them to lay all these data sources out, whether it be in-house, third-party, Excel sheets, and then we come up with a strategy to obtain all that data from them or the third party. We set up a server, we set up tasks, we set up jobs to, for example, we set up a daily data feed. We aggregate all this data in on a daily process, and we do what's called an ETL job. It's an extract, transfer, load job. This is custom tailored to each client, and it pulls all that data into essentially a database, what we call a staging database on our end. From there, we have direct access to work with all these data feeds simultaneously, and we're able to actually aggregate them into one data feed that goes into the RealINSIGHT platform. So we have a proprietary tool or module within the RealINSIGHT platform that we call the data integrator. And essentially that data integrator is able to interface with those staging tables that are all of a client's aggregated data. And they're able to pull in data to the RealINSIGHT on a field by field mapping basis. So that allows us full control of, this field from your source goes into this field within RealINSIGHT. And you can also do translation along the way. So a lot of these systems, third-party servicing systems, they may store like loan status as just a single character. And so you actually have to do a mapping from that character into the system. This is what it means, it's a specially serviced status or whatever. Mm-hmm. So you can actually do full control of source to destination with data mapping and data translation from multiple sources.
So Jordan, you just mentioned multiple sources, and while you were talking, I actually just showed the payment history screen in RealINSIGHT, and it is true that there are multiple ways to get data into a system, our system. Well, let's say our system, but one of the most common ways, to your point, was if somebody is dealing with loans that are not public, there's no database to go grab that data. What you're talking about with the servicer is very helpful. And then on a monthly basis, we would have, payment history update, reserves update, balances update. You started to discuss multiple different sources. Could you describe how we would be able to work with, a few different servicers? Because that is the case sometimes. And I think that's a pretty good pain point that's out there in the industry.
Yep, absolutely, and that's kind of what I was referring to when I stated that we pull them all in, and then we're able to aggregate them in our staging table. So maybe we load certain portions of data from one servicer, we load another payment history from another servicer. We're able to tie it all in and make it look seamless. That's kind of the benefit of the process that we employ, because it's very common that this data does come from multiple sources. So we have to have the ability to aggregate data and show it, seamlessly together.
Perfect. I will also mention, no, that's really helpful. I will also mention that for some of these, we see this a lot with the large private equity firms, the hedge funds, the banks. They have a lot of different data sources. They have that information, as you're mentioning with the servicers, but they also have a lot of, let's say, operating statement data or borrower information or rent roll data. Can you describe how we have some integration tools or templates that allow, and I'm going to show one as you're discussing, that allow our clients to take non-standard, very all over the place information that's coming over from borrowers and create a process?
Yep, and that's also kind of ties into the data integrator and the data field translation. So we are able to take, like you mentioned, Dan, very non-standard data. It may be a very specific custom Excel sheet or database that a client has been, managing on their own, and we're able to create a mapping, an integrator mapping from that specific sheet, and tie those fields from their sheet into RealINSIGHT. So they could continue to use their existing Excel sheet and upload that through our integrator product. And once the integrator has been set up in a one-time process for that sheet, those fields will continue to map each time they upload it right into the fields within RealINSIGHT that they want them to be the final destination for those data points.
Yeah. I mean, we understand that, and this is interesting, right? That's a big issue, is rent roll data and borrower data. If it's not at the servicer, what do you do? So we've been able to provide, these standard templates that will conform to the property type. Meaning, if it's hotel, multifamily, retail, office, all standard templates that we have the ability to say, here, based off of what the rules are, based on how you look at a loan, how you look at a property. You will be able to kind of leverage a lot of these templates, and they're Excel based. So, you're not staying away from Excel, which is helpful because everybody loves Excel, but it's controlled Excel. It's Excel with logic. It's Excel with rules. And, again, I think we're trying to help in those areas. And I think, a combination of, pulling information in from, a data feed or an API like that, plus giving the asset manager or the analyst or the portfolio manager tools that allow them to enter data in a standard and bulk or individual way. These are the types of things we're trying to do, because that's the only way to make your data actionable. You need to actually have it in a system in order to take advantage of it. Otherwise, it's just all over the place and in email. With that, Jordan, if you don't mind moving to how we work with actually, any questions, any questions, any comments? anyone have similar kind of routines that they've been trying to go through, or anything that stuck out from that conversation? So Jordan, if you would you describe another type of client, a hedge fund that buys B pieces, that invest in CMBS, how we work with their information, how we assist, and how we set up and maintain a client like that?
Sure. So it's actually very similar to, all of our processes are actually built on the same kind of framework where we, as I mentioned, we identify the data, we do the loading, we do the translation, and we set up these jobs and things like that to maintain all this. However, some of these, as you mentioned, Dan, pieces of the data may come from them initially, from a client initially, maybe a combination of setup, Excel sheets or a database. But then the monthly data, as you mentioned, may be public. So we are able to source that from IRP or Intex or TREP or some kind of public source. We actually have a proprietary process that we use, that we've built, which loads publicly available data and then aggregates it. And we're able to do, for example, like the monthly payment information from those sources directly. So that allows us to, again, the flexibility to do the first initial load from a certain data set and then go the ongoing pieces from, again, like the publicly available data.
Yep, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. But it doesn't have to just be, CMBS or agency or securitized data where it's publicly available. We also have the ability to, through, you talked about the integrator, through some of our routines, to enter in comp data, right? Or sales comps or lease comps in order to use that information. So does that work as well in terms of, from your experience, what are you seeing in terms of, does it matter how many data sources? Have you seen a lot of clients that have comps that they want to get into the system and use as well?
Absolutely.
What have you witnessed?
Yeah, no, you're not limited. Again, it's very dynamic. Multiple data sources is not a limiter, and truthfully, we could do as many data sources as exist. We're not limited. We have no limitations on data aggregation from multiple sources. We very frequently aggregate, 2, 3, 4 sources together. So it's a very common thing, and it's something that I think that we do pretty often, and we're quite good at.
Perfect. I just quickly, while you were talking about that, I did a map search. I like to always show some of this functionality because what are some of the positives, right? What are some of the abilities that one can do if all their information is in one place? And I just quickly, in our system in RealINSIGHT, what we'll do is, to further make data actionable, we will actually geocode all of the properties, so that if you wanted to very quickly understand your exposure in a specific market, could be public data, like Jordan was mentioning, could come from, like an Intex, could come from a servicer, could be sales comps or lease comps, like market data that gets layered in. So what I did is I quickly just searched for a number of different, anything that's in Miami within this portfolio, and it very quickly just brought up, a number of properties, and then in green, those are the properties, and then in black, those are the comps. And for example, that would, those are sales comps, and it will actually say, what the property sold for, how far it is from the subject, and you can use that for an analysis. So these are some of the things that we always like to highlight, that, if all of your data is in one place, through going through some of these routines, you do have the ability to very quickly say, what is my exposure to a specific thing, and then layer that in and say, okay, now I can report on that, right? I want to actually describe a couple other areas that I think are helpful. Why would you want to make all of this data actionable as it relates to something we call compliance and then reporting? But any questions in terms of some of those case studies? Anyone have similar, thoughts or if they want to mention anything. Okay, so I think another area that we like to touch on, we were talking about, making data actionable, is if you have all of your data in one place, you have the ability to manage by exception. So now this brings us to all of my information is in one platform. What can I do with it? So an example of that is it's very common for someone to say, I have, a couple thousand loans, tens of thousands of properties. I want to be able to set various different compliance items or alerts to say, let me know every time something updates. So if a borrower status changes, if a workflow gets prompted, if something gets transferred to, special servicing, if debt service drops, if revenue drops based off of, an operating statement that gets loaded into the system, you have the ability to always know exactly what's going on. It's very nice that you have the ability in this platform to have an alert or a prompt go both to your email and to come in the system, but you have this ability to now say, as this data is coming in from the servicer, as it's coming in through, the team that's using this, here are some areas that I need to focus on right now and take an action. So I just wanted to highlight that. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, and this goes beyond, I think very common, it's you talk about data visualization. I think a really interesting area that you could highlight by having all your data in one place is workflow. And what workflow is, or how we think of workflow is, what things do I have to do? What areas do I need to focus on after you get prompted by something like this? So for example, I'm just going to jump to something right here that says order appraisal if needed. So this got prompted by a specific action, and we're going to show what that looks like. So as data updated in the system, as the asset manager or the analyst assigned this specific loan to is now appointment of receiver, a workflow got prompted in an automated way based on that action to say, what are the steps? And this is fully customizable. So whatever process you're looking to build and track internally through having your data in one place, you then have the ability to say, based off of this status, get the trustee file, create the ASR, distribute the ASR, do the inspection, do the loan, the business plan, or do the underwriting model, and order an appraisal if needed. So this is a nice way to track and get a hold of process. And then what we like to do to tie it all together is you have the ability to track all of your processes in a very easy way. So you have the data coming in, you have the prompts that are letting you know what steps you have to take, you have the actual workflows that get prompted, and then what we like to do, and we've seen this work for a number of clients, is we have them track what are those workflow steps that are open, how long have they been open, who's responsible for them. So we were just showing kind of like a workflow or action plan dashboard showing you a 4 in canceled, 186 in completed. This is just a nice way to track your data and to make sure that, for better or worse, everyone is doing what they are supposed to for a growing portfolio. So just wanted to highlight a couple interesting things that could be helpful as you are bringing data into one place. And this is what we've been able to solve through RealINSIGHT. Questions, comments, anything that we can explain, or while we have Jordan on the line, anything we could explain further as it relates to making data actionable?
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I was just wondering how I can test out some of my loans here. Like, what's the process for that?
Sure. So that's actually a really good question. We understand that a lot of firms have all of their data in various different reports. They might have them in ASRs. They might have them in a pipeline report, in an investment memo. What we do when we try to provide access, especially early on, to our clients, is we'll say, give us reports, right? Give us an ASR, give us a pipeline report, give us an investor memo, give us a portfolio report, and allow us to extract that data, show you how it gets structured in the system, and see how that can be helpful. So that's what we do, is we basically just, throw us your most complicated reports, your most complicated loans, your most complicated properties, and we'll show you through our expertise, the experience we've had both in commercial real estate finance and technology, how we could take that information, make sense of it, and present it back to you, and provide you some of these, workflows that we were just describing.
Dan, we do have another question.
Sure.
The question is, can you show how loan origination integrates into the system?
Absolutely. So a lot of what we were showing is, and loan origination is interesting because it is another way to get data into the system, but a lot of what we were showing had to do with portfolio management, asset management, and special servicing, right? But on the front end, what we do is we do allow the opportunity to track a pipeline of any type of loan. So what we're showing here, I just pulled a pipeline report, and it's almost like an editable grid, like an editable Excel. So you can very easily just add new loans and just, fill out data. And as you enter information into this system, you have, just like before, and you were seeing on the asset management side, you'll have the ability to track various different checklists to say, this specific loan, Eastway Manor Apartments, it's in the origination status, it's considered a bridge loan. What are the steps that need to be taken in order to move this to closing? So, for example, we're showing here, this is a different type of action plan than the loan went to receivership, and what are the steps. Here, it's okay. The steps open are get the valuation, do the budget, enter the sources and uses, confirm the deal origination data, run the business plan or underwriting model, and you can see in a very easy way, here's 10 to 15 steps that have been completed. Because RealINSIGHT is a full document repository, you can see that there are only 1 of 5 documents as part of this origination process that have been corralled. So you have 1 appraisal and the other documents aren't available yet. So essentially what we're doing is we're just creating a very easy to use, almost editable Excel. You can just update information very easily as if it's Excel. However, all of this information stays and lives in the system so that when the loan closes, you had your information up front, all your documents, all of your status, all of your process, the information about the borrower in one place. And that is a very common way to get data into the system, is get all of your loans that were prospects in there, keep all of that data that were prospective loans. So for example, if I wanted to very quickly see a dashboard of loans that are in a pipeline, we were looking at before, workflow steps around asset management and special servicing. Here would be an example of, again, just rolling up that data and saying, well, high level, I have 1 loan in closing, 14 loans in origination, 2 loans that have been rejected, 10 loans that have started, 5 loans, 1 loan in underwriting step 1, 4 loans in underwriting step 2, 5 loans total in underwriting, for a total of 32. So essentially what we're doing here is originators log in, they have a deal that comes across their desk, they can track it in a pipeline. When the loan closes, you have all that information in one place, which I think is very helpful. I think that's unique to have both your front end and your asset management in one place for your reporting. Great question.
Awesome. Anyone else?
Anyone?
Feel free to write in the chat or just.
Perfect.
All
Well,
right.
we wanted to keep this short and sweet. We appreciate that. We continue to stay in touch with everybody. I will encourage everyone to come to our next webinar that's going to be next month around reporting and what you can actually do to output that information in some pretty interesting complex reports, ASRs, and so on. So that's we call that our business transformation process. So we're going to be doing that next month. We appreciate everybody's time. And again, thank you for the ongoing support and attention today. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Can I also add, Dan, if
Sure.
anyone is interested in a more personalized demo or has some questions that they didn't want to ask to the group, please feel free to shoot me an email. I know everyone's received an email invite from me. So just, feel free to reply and ask your questions there. We would love to hear from you guys. That's it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.